All right, everybody, we are here. My name is David Maez, broker, co-founder of VIVO REALTY, and I'm sitting here with.
Bernice Maez, broker manager, co-founder also of VIVO REALTY.
We've been trying to have a chat about everything that's going on. There's been so many changes in the real estate industry, and we have been keeping up with everything that's been going on. But I want to have a discussion about these portal wars that are happening. And just to level set, not just on an experience level, but our experience with the portals, both Bernice and I believe, when did we first engage with, first look level set? So, portal meaning a portal where people go to look for real estate. So, that would be Zillow, homes.com, realtor.com, so on and so forth. And if you've been keeping up with the news, the real estate news, Zillow and homes.com are going head to head. Zillow is also having a battle with Compass Realty about clear cooperation and other things. But Zillow's really changed and evolved since we first engaged with them. And Bernice, I'll let you talk about when we first, because Bernice's role has been primarily managing and handling the lead distribution in our brokerage. And obviously, we want to get high quality, high converting leads to our agents. And so go talk a little bit about how we first engaged with Zillow. Must have been 2009, 10,
Well,
maybe later.
it's the kind of a crazy history, really. I'll try to kind of not go into too much of a rabbit hole, but obviously everybody knows back in the day, the mid 2000s, Realtor.com came around, and Realtor.com, was part of NAR, and they were a great marketing portal, if you will, and all of our MLS listings were automatically fed into realtor.com because they were part of NAR. And so that was a great thing. And I remember back in the day, we used to buy, the leads from realtor.com, and it was a great thing. And so I think that's always good for new realtors. And so we engaged in that. We were not bought into Zillow at all. I mean, I could actually think back. It was kind of funny, looking back, where they would have the realtor.com would actually do the commercials, with buyers showing up on a doorstep that were from Zillow. They were Zillow buyers. And the person at the door said, I bought this house 6 months ago. You have old information. And that was basically the history, because Zillow did not get the MLS feed. And so, obviously things evolved and things changed, and, they now have access to the MLS feed, and kind of that the rest is kind of history. So we engaged with Zillow a little after realtor.com. There was the whole thing that happened with OpCity, and literally overnight Zillow just, started a new program called Flex, and which now they allowed, certain brokerages access to those leads that they would give you, and then they would compensate. You would have to compensate them with a commission split or a compensation split, if you will. So that's
Which
happening
means,
now, but you could
yeah,
also buy leads too. So,
well, which
go
means,
ahead,
and
David.
this is where it gets into where I cry foul on this is now you're getting into brokerage territory where you're no longer just a lead distribution company or a marketing company or a data company. You're getting into brokerage
Right,
territory, which they tried to do on the listing side, failed miserably. Now are starting to do it on the buyer side, which means they're trying
right.
to control the transaction from, I think the way that I saw it was from the
Every
search to
angle.
to the closing, right?
Hmm.
And even with they
Yep.
have Zillow Home Loans, and now they've acquired a CRM. And so when you start to think about it, what they're really doing is trying to control that buyer process, that buyer and seller process from start to finish. And what the fear that
Correct.
I have is once you have that kind of control, you got to think about Amazon. If Amazon were to sell, for example, you're selling coffee cups, then Amazon starts to sell coffee cups. Do you think
Right.
they're going to promote their coffee cups or your coffee cups? They're going to promote their coffee
Right.
cups. And so they
Of
can
course.
throttle that back. They can charge you more. They can remove you. They can block you, which is what they're doing with the clear
Yeah.
cooperation. They're basically saying if you don't comply with this, we're going to not allow you on the portal. And so
Right.
it's interesting to me that these portals are now moving into broker territory, and we'll have a
Yeah.
conversation about clear cooperation because I'm all for more visibility, more eyeballs. But where I
Right.
cry foul is they're reselling our leads to other
Right.
brokers and other agents, and we're not getting compensated for that. And so you
Right.
have, I'll let you talk about homes.com, which is owned by CoStar. And by the way, I did the math yesterday. They are a $127 billion company. Zillow is a $35 billion company. So we're not talking about Main Street here. We're talking about Wall Street. We're Main Street. We're the independent small brokerage, if you will, boutique brokerage. And I got a problem with a lot of that stuff. But anyways, talk about homes.com because that's an interesting twist also,
Well, I'll kind of go back to the
which
Zillow
I like
thing for
it.
just a minute
Yeah.
if I can. So let me kind of go back to the Zillow thing. Obviously people who are familiar with Flex know they get the leads, and then they pay, the referral fee or whatever it is to Zillow, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. Where I have a problem is where they start telling you or try to dictate, if you will, how to run your brokerage. And that's where I have the problem. So when we're giving the referral fee to them and then they're trying to control how you're running your brokerage by having to follow these certain guidelines and rules. And look, I don't have a problem buying leads from Zillow. I think they're a great marketing company. The problem I have is when they try to become your brokerage or your title company or your lender or your a CRM or what have you. That's where I have the problem. So again, I don't mind buying leads from Zillow. I think that's great. They're a great marketing company. We couldn't afford to even make an eighth of a website that where we would get that many eyeballs. So, and as far as for the consumer, I think it's a good thing for them to go on the MLS and for, those listings to get distributed. But again, I have the problem when they're trying to sell us back our listing leads. That's where my
Right.
problem is, right?
Now explain quickly
So
just for the audience.
Homes.com, which I actually really love their concept. Obviously, if you're a listing agent, you're going to love that concept because I think their slogan is, yeah, your listing, your lead, and that
Mhm.
is 100% true. And so I just absolutely love that. And again, the way I look at Homes.com as well, they're a great marketing company. Okay. And so at the end of the day, as realtors and brokers, we want people to market our product. And our product is homes or land or commercial space or whatever we are trying to sell for our clients. And so again, I don't mind these companies being out there. I don't even mind buying some of those leads or what have you. But as long as you're not telling me how to run my brokerage, I think that's where I kind of start drawing the line.
Well, and it goes back to the point
That's why I
of,
like homes.com.
yeah, it goes back to that point though, as independent brokers and agents, this is the time to go hyper local. This is the time to
Yeah.
invest in your own marketing. And you got to remember that on a macro scale, these platforms can get lots of visibility, but on a micro scale,
Yeah.
being super hyper local is very important because if you're writing a blog about your neighborhood or you're doing things that are hyper local, the big box can't really compete with that. And so again, going
Right.
back to Main Street, we're the closest to the consumer. We're the ones in the trenches, shaking hands, kissing babies, doing all that stuff, getting these people to the end of their closing. And people trust us. They don't trust platforms. And
Right.
so you have to utilize these
Right.
platforms. But in reality, what we need to do is evolve and control more of the transaction as these
Yeah.
platforms are having title companies and lenders and all this stuff now in their ecosystem. And let's not even talk about Redfin and Rocket Mortgage.
Right.
That's another
Right.
huge play right there. They're trying to bring everything into this ecosystem. And I think that as independent brokerages, we need to offer some of those same services to our clients to keep everybody in our ecosystem and to be able to compete.
Right.
Because the one thing I'm not about, and I never have been about, is I'm not about Wall Street. I'm about Main Street and I'm about small business. And I'm bull about that, be bullish about that, because I think that's what makes America thrive. And with these portals, trying to
Mhm.
take a big piece of that, we have to be cautious about who we decide to play and do business with. So that's my
Yeah,
hot take, if
I
you
I
will.
agree. Well, I agree 100%. And we have to remember that, while we're in these relationships with our clients or customers and turn them into clients, they trust us 150%. And it is because what we do every day, right? We're working with lenders hand in hand, title companies hand in hand. We're in our CRMs, we're doing all those things. And so we know the products that work for us. And again, I have nothing bad to really say about any of those portals, the Zillows and the homes.com and all of that. Again, I think that everybody needs to stay in their lane, and their lane was marketing. And I'm talking specifically about Zillow. And they've gotten into several other lanes now. So I think there's where that overreach has come too far. And so
Yeah.
again, I use both products. So again, I'm not trying to knock one or the other. I'm just saying what my opinion is or my thoughts are on that. So
Yeah. And again, just in closing, it's not that we're anti-tech. We love technology. I'm an
right.
advocate. I teach technology. It's not to say that because the consumer is always going to drive the ship of what they want, right? And they're always
Mhm.
going to go for the easiest thing. And I think it's very easy for them to go look for properties on Zillow and homes.com and so on and so forth.
Right.
But once you start getting into the transactional element and then opening the kimono to all these other things that brokerages do, that's where I cry foul. because that is a big
Right.
percentage. And I don't have the stats in front of me of the brokerage business, the real estate brokerage business includes both big box brokerages and a lot of independent brokerages like us, or just solo brokerages and agents. And
Right.
that's a big piece of the pie. And I don't think that we talked about this too. It's a relationship business. And especially with them
Yes.
getting involved in the lending side of things, I don't see that working. They can be competitive with rates and things like that, but ultimately it's a face to face, it's a belly to belly, and you need that relationship piece. But it'll be interesting on
I
how
agree.
things play out. We'll probably do another segment on clear cooperation and all these different changes that are happening to our industry. I feel like we cannot catch a break. It was COVID, and then it was rate interest rates, and now we have this portal stuff and changes to our commission
That
stuff.
was
And
the
but I think at the end of the
NAR
day,
thing.
yeah, but both Bernice and I are heavily involved in the association and stuff, and so we advocate for that. And we advocate we're pro consumer, right? Pro consumer, pro
Right.
transparency. We were here to help. We have a servant's heart. We're here to help our clients and our consumers, and we're about that. But I don't like when Wall Street is trying to take over Main Street, or reverse that. Yeah, Wall Street's trying to take over Main Street. I don't. I cry foul on that, and I'll do it every time. And so you've got to compete, stay aware, and you can end on that. Get involved, Bernice. If you're an agent, how does
Yeah.
one get involved with some of the changes and things that are happening at the board level? Is there a way for agents to become more?
Oh my gosh, there's so many different ways that you can get involved. I am the chair for the professional standards and development for Collin County area realtors this year. So we invite everyone, come get involved. Come see what's happening at your local association. Be involved at that level. It'll give you a broader view of what's happening in your industry. Go to the Texas Realtors website, and there's tons of information there. So don't always, again, just see what's on social media. What are social media saying? Go to the source, go to the Texas Realtors website, go to your local board's website, go to the NAR website. So I was just going to piggyback really what you were saying too, David, about the industry and the changes and all the things that we're going through right now. We're seeing this, but I'm going to tell everybody this too shall pass. It always
Yeah.
does. Both David and I have been in the business for a little over 20 years. And so we've seen everything. I mean, we've seen it kind of come and go, and short sales foreclosures, and changes in our industry and all sorts of stuff. So again, it's just what we always try to tell our realtors as well is try to keep your blinders on, in a sense of focus on what your mission is to get it done. Focus on your customers and your clients. You'll be successful no matter what portal is out there, no matter what website, no matter what MLS is out there.
Yeah.
You'll be a successful realtor, and you'll be able to help your clients.
I agree. I agree. Stay involved, stay persistent. And again, going back to the marketing and branding, it's a time for us to go back and do the things that we should have been doing and really make yourself visible, especially with social media and digital marketing. All right, everybody have a
I
good
agree.
day, and look
All
out for
right.
our next segment on clear cooperation. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks.